Hello and welcome to another episode of Voices of Change. And we are here today to talk about policies. There's always this big conversation about education systems, policies, structure, curriculum. But the truth is, teachers live inside those systems every day. And most of the time, the system feels like a room designed without them in mind. So today, I want to unpack how systems actually feel on the ground through the lens of people supporting teachers directly and what can be done about it. So let's start with Pablo and George answering a lot of questions, having discussion points, jumping off each other's ideas, and we're going to do a lot today. So keep watching, keep supporting. See you guys. Hi everyone. This is the fourth episode of Voices of Change. We're going to start with Pablo. Hi Pablo, how are you doing?
Hello, George. It's a pleasure, as always, to be here with you. And hello, everybody who might be watching or listening to us. Thank you very much for joining us again.
We're going to talk about systems. We're going to talk about policies today and both of your takes on it. All right. So Pablo, in your coaching work, you often meet teachers who have lost a bit of themselves inside the system. And we all know that's true for almost all of the teachers we all have met collectively. Not because they're not passionate, but because the structure doesn't make space for their voice. Very, very big reason of silent club as well. But when that happens, what's usually the first thing they let go of, and how do you help them find their way back to it?
I love how we always start with the easy questions.
I'm pleased you went first, Pablo.
There we go. No, thank you, George. And thank you, Shruti. I think very relevant questions. And obviously, I think very complex as well. I don't think there is a straightforward, easy answer. Like always, I know this is just us three sharing our opinions and our experience. Any other opinion or experience that the audience would like to share, they can do. What I find that the first thing to go, was that the question, Shruti? The first thing to go tends to be themselves or their well-being, their health, their mental health. Not with everybody, obviously, but a lot of the time, teachers in general have very hard working ethics, and we are very invested. So what I've seen is that we will often prioritize the work that we need to do over our own well-being. So if you've got 20 papers to mark on a weekend, you'll be marking those 20 papers to mark, even if it takes up your whole weekend and you don't get a chance to do the sport or the hobby you'll get out or see your friends and family or whatever. So a lot of the time, what I find does go first is that personal well-being, and very shortly after, or as with a knock-on effect, you start to get burnout. And then motivation just goes out the window, essentially. You just become like another cog in the wheel, and you don't really feel like that you have a purpose, or you kind of forget what you're doing this for. Like, why did you get into education in the first place? So that tends to be, in my experience, what goes first. And what to do to get back into that is to look at it in the face, really, and just ask perhaps uncomfortable questions of saying, first of all, stop and saying, what's going on? Doing a bit of an evaluation, how happy am I? How satisfied? How fulfilled do I feel? How content am I with my current situation? And what do I need to do to change it towards a situation where I'd be more happy, that I'd be more happy with? That's a very sort of simmered down answer to what I think is a very complex situation question.
Yeah, yes. As well, Pablo, I've found that when people are in these situations, that actually it drains their creativity a little bit, and therefore then the education becomes a bit mundane, not through anyone's fault but just subconsciously. People are so exhausted that they're not as creative. They haven't got the space to just think, what is a great way to deliver this? And as much as everybody tries their best, they will often go for an easier option or something that just feels the right way of doing it. And I think that's often a shame, really, when I understand completely, but it can be a real drain on that creativity
Totally agree, George. Yeah. And ultimately to the detriment of the students, right? Unfortunately, it is. I mean, I've put my hand up. I've been there where I've had to teach something that I've taught before. And maybe because of time constraints, I've said, okay, well, I've taught it before like this and it went well. Let me just do it the same. And then I've missed an opportunity for me to grow, for me to experiment, to try, or even to better adapt to my specific students in that context or in that situation. So I think what we're looking at is, the level of education perhaps takes a hit, and the learning experience takes a hit.
But not through anyone's fault, of course. It's just the way the system and the policy means that, practitioners are having to do the best that they can on the resources that they can, and those resources being their mindset, their emotional regulation, so on and so forth.
I totally agree. Shruti, care to chip in?
I think creativity part really something that happens first. I think one of the things your brain is working on an auto mode. I think that happens a lot. And like you mentioned, the level of education or level of delivery that needs to go ahead, it does not. In all of this, I've noticed that nobody asks. You said that we need to stop and ask. Nobody's asking them, are they doing okay? There are no, genuine, how are you question asked. We never know that there are burned out teachers walking the corridors. We just never know. And because
it's
of course
like
there's
silent pandemic of burnt out teachers almost.
And almost all of them are. George, you were saying something?
I say people mask it so well as well, don't they? I'm fine, And I think there is a kind of an unwritten subconscious of, I've got to keep going. There's a pride element. There is in schools, we need to build this culture where it's okay to ask for help, and we don't the culture just isn't there. And if I say, we're a listening school, we do this, we do this, we do this. But is it actually? Are people afraid to say, I'm sorry, I'm really struggling, I need some help with this? And then I look to the leaders. How is it modeled? How do leaders say that are invincible? How do they say, I need some help with this? Because they don't do it either. So it's all very well wanting that, but everyone at the end of the day is human. We need to recognize that.
Yeah, it's always the top-down approach. People on the top they don't say a word, and then the whole thing goes down.
It's maybe, I don't want to step into perhaps follow-up questions, Shruta, that might be coming up. If I am, do interrupt me and ask the question if it's relevant.
That's okay.
If what I'm saying is relevant to the next question, I mean. Kind of like building that bridge onto leadership and education. I totally agree. Perhaps our experience, perhaps our generation still has experienced leadership as very authoritative. And you, in a way that teachers are authoritative in the sense that we assume that just because of their role or their position, they know best or they know better. But quite right, like George was saying, leaders also have doubts and also feel overwhelmed and also need to ask for help where necessary. I think more and more now, you're able to see educational cultures that do encourage all of that communication. I collaborate with a community of schools and language school directors. And I suppose their profile is smaller scale. Maybe these schools have somewhere between 100 to 1,000 students or 800 students at most. But the team is maybe between 5 to, say, 16 teachers. So I feel it's perhaps a lot more manageable like that, as opposed to having massive schools where you have 20, 30, hundreds of staff. What procedures do you set up so that you do constantly check and regulate and check in on everybody's genuine well-being? And how open is the system to taking in suggestions and possible changes to keep improving? Like I said, I think it's probably easier to do on a smaller scale, but it's very important for leaders to have that systemic view of the situation. Because if you're down on the ground, you get very valuable hands-on experience of what the reality is. But I think leaders need to be able to zoom out and see that sort of eagle view, bird's eye view.
Bird's eye view,
of the actual system. What's it like to be a teacher? What's it like to be a student? What's it like to be part of this team? And I think that's a skill that not all leaders in education have had the opportunity to develop or train in.
That's true. I don't think this can be trained. I think it's something that You have to sit with yourself and really consciously make effort to do so.
I'm saying about understanding the perspective of what practitioners are having to deal with, what are the teachers dealing with, and the strongest leaders that I work with are the ones that roll their sleeves up and say, yes, do you know what, I'm going to do this, we're going to do this together, let's be a team spirit, because that builds authenticity and that builds a credibility of what is expected.
Yeah, it does wonders for trust if everybody feels included, right? And valued. And I would perhaps, Shruti, not agree 100% with you. I think I disagree with the fact that with what you said about it not being possible to train it. I think it is a skill. When I trained to become a certified coach, part of my coaching teams certification and training was to look at, to practice this systemic view. And I'm not sure what it might be called in English. It's probably called constellations. So it's organizational constellations.
Okay.
I'm doing a direct translation here. It might not be that in English, but in a nutshell, it was developed by a German. I hope I'm not putting my foot in it here. If I am, please do correct me in the comments. A German psychologist developed this sort of way of understanding systems and being able to look at systems and how to work with it. What it looks like in practice, you basically configure or you represent the situation that you are struggling with. And you can do that 2D, like on a piece of paper, or you can do that 3D where you kind of like, put things around, and you're looking at, it just helps you give physicality to context that you're working with, and it takes you out of it. You are then an observer of this.
Not inside.
Exactly. And I think leaders can practice that skill, because it is, if this is something that everybody watching and listening finds interesting and would like to know more of, let us know, and we can obviously discuss an episode on it further. But I think it can be. Okay, decision made. There we go.
This is interesting. Share that study and we can put that in the description, because this can be helpful. Because the people that I have seen, like mostly in the leadership positions, especially in education institutions, they're either they're firefighting, or they're too authoritative, or they are just in denial. I'm not pointing out everybody here. Most of them, yes. Because the situation mostly are firefighting all the time. It's something that I've seen, especially with founders, with directors, with owners, with principals, anybody in that chair. They think that, firefighting becomes their main job. And that also puts them into a burnout zone. And then from that, all of the pressure is coming on teachers. And it's like an ongoing thing. It's a loop.
One of the leadership work that I would do, which hopefully coming soon to Selling Club, and when we start making the leadership one, will be my 2 golden rules in leadership is don't take any nonsense and don't cause any nonsense as a leader. I say that to my deputy head all the time as I used to leave. I'd say, right, I'm off site this afternoon. Don't take any nonsense and don't cause any nonsense, because, it could happen, couldn't it, potentially, where that unfolds. And that firefighting, you almost as the leader need to have a very strong culture and a very strong system and process in place that doesn't continue to then make you as the leader be firefighting all the time. That would be
because I totally agree, George. And I think that is particularly important, because linking to what we were saying before, if leaders are firefighting and they are in the action, which I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, I'm saying that they should be there, but not there all the time. Because in my opinion, their role, anybody's role as a leader, is to be able to lead towards the direction that the organization needs to be going in. And to do that, you need to be able to have a wider perspective on where things are going, what's coming, how can we adapt in time and successfully. So if you are constantly firefighting, one, you don't have the time, and 2, you don't have that space and that distance to be able to have that wider vision. So I totally agree. I think it's vital that leaders put systems into place that allow them to not be firefighting 100% of the time.
Yeah, I think more than anyone, the system actually will be used by the leaders more than anybody else. And then again, top-down approach that happens.
I was going to say, and again, if it's not relevant, chop it out. We started with teachers. The question started with teachers. We've gone up to leaders. And I think another whole different conversation to be had, but the same as we were saying, we don't really ask teachers how they are, and there are no systems in place to check how teachers are. I would find it interesting to do that, obviously for leaders, and to do that for the students themselves as well. Because we were just saying I was just saying leaders are there to be able to make decisions and take the organization in the direction that it needs to be going in. That conversation and those decisions, I think, need to take into account teachers' opinions because they are the ones that are on the ground. But ultimately, I think it'd be interesting to ask the people receiving the service, the people benefiting ultimately from all of this, the students, what they think and how they feel and where they want it to go. I think that would bring an interesting conversation to the table as well.
That's actually true. That's something, another episode altogether.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm all about opening episodes today, aren't I?
Yes, but that's nice. George, you have also worked with both management and, organization and staff and everything. What have you noticed being like one of the first steps or the first signs for, let's say, staff morale being low or, motivation going out of the window because of the policies? From the policies point.
So, in my opinion, the first thing that I see is the demeanor of a person. And I must recognize that when I'm working with a big corporation or I'm working in a school, whichever it is, I must remember that humans are humans and that everybody comes to work with problems at home, experiencing in their own personal life. And we must then remember that we then put that situation into the corporate workspace, into the education space, and then we have to fulfill that with all of the policies, the procedures that go with us. And sometimes if a person is not emotionally regulated, if a person is feeling rubbish at what they're doing, and then we throw on some, well, actually the policy says this and the procedures are this, that's the last thing they're going to want to engage with. So it's so important that we recognize, well, one, we understand that some days are good and some days are not good. This comes into that resilience. Again, module 6 of my wonderful online course. But we must recognize that first of all. And as leaders and as senior leaders and as people that look after leaders, we must remember that some days are good and some days really aren't. We also must remember that some days are good. And when they're good, they're amazing. And that's when we really start to reap the fruit. I think when we talk about well-being, my take on this is we always go for the negative. Oh dear, it's not a good day today. All those problems at home. Let's flip that. And let's actually remember and recall, we do this as humans all the time, don't we? What is that positive? What is the, wow, you really achieved fantastic things there. That was superb when you did that. And that comes back to that leadership again of any style. And I'm talking about, if there's a board that are looking after a head teacher or however, when we recognize and we grow people, that is then when we start to boost their well-being. Now, we can hold them to account for a policy or a policy breach or this or that, because we've boosted their energy. We've built that culture of we do a great job here and we're going to recognize that and we're going to grow each other. So my leadership, 4 pillars will always be about empowering others, growing, connecting, and recognizing. They're my 4. And again, this will all be another episode. This will feature in some of our new training that we're going to develop, Shruti, some of our new courses.
I think George answered. No, we are not. George actually answered my second question about humanizing policies. But see, that's the thing. We talk about systems and policies in place to kind of help with the workload or the burnout. At the same time, they can't be rigid. At the same time, they need to help both the parties. At the same time, it needs to be fair. How does it work? I mean, this is an open question to both of you.
I believe we need to understand people. We need to understand the dynamics of the team. We need to understand the demographics, the context, bring that to shape the policy rather than trying to put a policy and people have got to change and adapt their behaviors. There'll be much greater success when we think about it the other way. This is the team. These are the strengths. These are the opportunities. And now we're going to translate that into the policy. Of course, compliance, of course, safety, of course, that whole utilitarianism, the greatest good for the greatest number. I love all of that kind of principle. But that would be my perspective on how we do things. We shape it the other way.
Yeah.
George, I was totally in line with what you're saying there. I was going to say we need to ask questions and we need to make everybody who the policy affects feel like they've had a say in the policy. And that, through asking questions, you understand all of the aspects and all of the elements and all of the players in that policy, which is what I feel you were saying. My issue perhaps with this is that if we take it to larger scale, it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of processing time to ask all those questions, to collect all that data, to get all of that information, to then analyze it, review it, cross it over and everything. That by the time you put a policy together, the situation might have changed.
Yes, that was my next thing. That was actually my next thing to ask. Yeah, please. Continue.
So I think in smaller contexts it works, but if we're talking, say, nationally, and we want to make sure that I think it can be done, and I think we're on the right track in wanting to do it like this, making everybody feel included. What I'm not sure how we could how to optimize it would be when we take it to that grander scale of, say, like nationally, or at a bigger scale, when you're trying to include and understand everybody who the policies are going to affect.
Yeah. Sometimes we're reactive as well, rather than being proactive. Yeah. We think, oh, crumbs, we've just had a world epidemic of coronavirus. Let's think about virtual online. How do we educate pupils online? How do we move to a system that's very reactive, isn't it? Rather than thinking proactively, what is a better way of doing this? I mean, I'm not going to bring up the whole COVID situation, but my goodness, did we learn so much? This wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for COVID. This whole
that's true.
3 parts of the world, 3 time zones, and we are able to create this material. But no one had thought of that beforehand, did they? I know that some companies were starting to think about creating and building platforms like this, but I mean, that came from a reaction rather than a proactivity.
Sure.
How do we... That's a question, I suppose, for our viewers. How do you predict what's coming? How are you proactive? If you know someone's likely to get pregnant, for example, there's a maternity cover, there's going to be a big change coming. Yeah. How do we prepare for that change? We know a principal is going to be retiring soon. We know that the library is going to have a new building. What is the impact of that? How do we measure that? How are we proactive in looking forward to shape the next set of policies?
And I think a big question to ask in those sort of situations is also, what predicted problems can we come up with, or what problems can we predict that will come up? This is something that I do in lessons, and I've taught, and I was trained to do. You plan your lesson, you get everything ready, and then you go through your section of predicted problems. So what might drop, what might bomb, and then what's your plan B if that happens? So again, you could get lost in that process of predicted problems. So I think it's striking a balance. So if we know that we're going to have a new library building and it's going to be out for the next year, what can we set up so that nobody feels that tension, so that nobody feels that we're missing that? But if we do encounter issues further down the line, what backup solutions do we have? And at some point, you're going to have to call it a day and say, okay, if all of this, goes to pot, we'll then have to react, or we'll try and be prepared, or we'll try to see it coming as it comes, in a sense, right?
Right.
That's what I think, at least. Shruti, sorry, I keep not letting you take it.
No, it's okay. That's the conversation that we keep having. See, that I think my takeaway from both of your answers would be, one, the back calculation of sorts, the backwards calculation that you talked about, and then humanizing that entire thing that we have said that at the day, and of course it'll be like a lot of data to process if we really do that, but we really need to look at people and the problems and all of these things. I think, yes, humanizing policy is something that can be done, but my question still remains, wherein how do we scale it? Like if we were to do it on a very big level, and there are organizations involved, and then there are, of course, institutions. It's just not one, right? There's school, there's colleges, university, and then from there, we've got a whole research thing going on. All of that, of course, starts small. We do a backward calculation of things. Maybe we can have representation of people who are going to be affected during policymaking, which usually does happen, but not at a large scale. It's just few people on the top making decisions for the one who might get affected.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's fine, George. I was going to say, I'm not going to claim to have the answer or the solution to that very real issue. An idea that pops to mind is allowing institutions to work to be autonomous, in the sense that to be able to scale it down to their context, to be able to make decisions within their context. However, with also the added view and having the very upfront awareness that even though they are independent and, let's say, in their own little bubble, that bubble is part of a larger ecosystem, and that it needs to fit in. There needs to be a balance and an equilibrium and an alignment within the system. So that's one way I would see of being able to perhaps optimize it and being able to make, solve that issue of it being such a large endeavor.
Right. What do you say, George?
Yeah, I have to agree. I think we've gone through a process here of discussion. We've kind of been thinking about how the process and the organizations shape themselves around the people. But in reality, we know that doesn't happen.
That's what.
We know that in reality, the business has its output. It decides what its outcomes need to be. And therefore, the people must be the machinery that make the outcomes possible. And sometimes it's just tough. You have to just get on with it. And sometimes a bit of tough love can be helpful. On the other hand, we must still consider that our workforces are humans, and they do have situations and they do have contexts, would be my immediate thoughts.
I love that, George.
Yeah. It's a reality check from George that businesses, they work in a certain way, and we can't just flip everything upside down just because. But at the same time, humanize it. True, very true.
And I think that I totally agree. I think you've just sort of opened the lid on a can that I think we're not always very aware of. And that is that education and the sector and the industry of education is, every sector and every industry is very particular. But I think education particularly is often in that sort of fight between, do we run it as a business and it needs to be profitable, and the output that we're giving is shaping the future. Essentially, we spend more time with children than their parents do almost nowadays.
Yeah.
So, and they spend, people spend the first 23 years of their lives, 20 odd years of their lives in educational institutions. So how do we make those two things work, essentially?
There are a lot of countries who have, of course, I won't say 100% commercialized, but have commercialized. And I've seen institutions running like a business. But at the same time, I've seen too much of it. Then I've seen a very nice balance of business plus the fact that they're shaping it, the future of those kids. And then I've seen it completely the other way around, not at all run as a business and kind of going in losses and things like that. So I think all the three, we can't be, like you said, it has to be an equilibrium of both the things. Education, of course, is a business, one of the biggest industries out in the world. There are all sorts of people, all sorts of jobs, all sorts of, I think everything that can be taken into education, whether you're an engineer, whether you're from any background, anything. It's one of the biggest industries. But finding that equilibrium wherein it does operate as a business, maybe at the management side of it. And then teachers, I think teachers given pressure to run or operate as an employee in like a traditional business, how it happens. I think that is where the problem is caused. Because I've seen it myself, the teachers are given targets of maybe admissions or maybe things, extracurricular things that needs to be sold as a part of surveys. So I've seen that too often, and it was the first time I saw it. Yeah, it was very shocking. When teachers are given that responsibility, I think that's when the system breaks.
Yes. At risk of diverting the conversation slightly, when we are asked as educators, what does the system need? Apart from we say, it needs more money, it needs more resources, so on and so forth. And this does come back to your point, Shruti. It will circle a little bit. But the trouble is, when we have more, we then want more. And I think back to when I was half my age, when I was very young, I wasn't earning particularly well. I was on the first pay grade of a teaching salary, and I would visit the Maldives. I would visit these wonderful places. I could afford to do what I do. Now I look back and I think I earn more now than I did then, but I still want more. The more you have, the more you want. You fall into this lifestyle that give and take all the time. And now I'm thinking, well, actually, I want more. So yes, okay, resources are a thing. Financially, could be, we could double the income to schools, but we'd still want more. It still wouldn't be enough, would it? So I guess what I'm trying to say is work with what you've got to the best that you can and be creative with your thoughts. Rather than, again, going back to that negative, oh, we haven't got this, we haven't got that. Well, what have we got? What have we got that we can do more? What are the compromises to be able to make the best of a situation would be my initial thinking.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you, George. And have a look. That is, I suppose, a very coaching approach to things like what do we have?
I was about to say the
reality,
same thing. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. What's the current situation? And then what changes do we need to make, or what movements do we need to make to go from situation A, which is now, to situation B, which is where we'd like to be? I agree, because I don't think throwing double wages to teachers, I mean, it'd make everybody a lot happier if they doubled their wage. But it's exactly for now. If you still are under the same stress and you're still having to kind of like trudge through the same situations, for how long will your salary justify the, let's say, suffering that you're going through? So I agree. I don't think throwing more money at education is the solution. I think we can be a lot more efficient with different things. Sorry, yeah?
Yeah. As in the background, of course, we've got artificial intelligence, and we need to be reminded that it's not to replace teachers. It's not to replace humans. It still needs human input. But what it will do is make a 5-minute task a 1-minute task, an hour's task a 5-minute task. And I think that is where we need to start to be creative in education about what is available to us. And, rather than draining us of our creativity, which we said right at the beginning.
Right.
So exhausted, we're so tired, we can't keep up with this. There's so much to do all of the time. Actually, to ask AI to spark a bit of excitement and some hooks into our lessons and our education. Okay, great. I now haven't had to emotionally connect with a situation because AI has done that process for me. Now my brain is a bit more relaxed. It's got a bit more time. It's had a time to think. Now I can actually do the job that I love doing, working with young people, working with pupils to inspire and so on and so forth. Put my energies into that rather than be thinking about putting into the mechanics and the engineering of it all.
What a lovely takeaway. What people don't think like this about AI even now, George, even after we've been at it for majority of, I think, 3 years, if I'm not wrong. From past 3 years, at least I have been having the same conversation around AI. Everybody talks about the threat and all of those things, but nobody actually relate to the time that is saved. I won't say nobody, but maximum people still think of it as threat. So thank you so much for bringing this. This was actually, and I love the fact that every episode we go back to the mindset part of it. Always. We end up on, always. I think we can talk about all of the social parts of it and everything, but as an individual, whosoever is watching this episode or the other episode, there's a reason why there's a pattern of all three of us talking about mindset at the end. And I don't think we should take it lightly. That's something.
Not at all. Not at all. I love how it happens naturally as well, right? We kind of go chewing into these sort of big topic. Yeah. Completely unscripted. Having said this, I'm going to throw a friendly spanner in the works, if I may.
Yes, please.
Just because I can't, unless I'd need to ask George more questions, and then I'd probably find that I'd agree in parts of what he was saying. But on a surface level, my initial reaction to what you were saying, George, about AI was, I don't agree, because part of at least my job, or what I enjoy about my job, is that creative process of the planning, the putting together, the connecting emotionally with how can I make this topic stand out, make it relevant, interesting to my learners? And then I'm thinking about my learners or my team of teachers or my board of directors or whatever. And it's that creative process that I find I enjoy most of the time. It's kind of like bringing those ideas together. However, I will say I then use AI to just help me with the actual processing of it or formatting of it or writing down of it. But that initial connection and emotional connection, I've felt and experienced that I need to be doing that and then use AI to help me with the more procedural aspects of it. That might be in line with what you were saying, and I might have taken what you were saying wrongly, but I felt I wanted to...
Okay, so you're absolutely right. The process of education is glorious. That's why we do what we do. We love teaching. We love that. Okay, we're going to teach this lesson. I'm going to really enjoy it and so on. But sometimes you need a bit of a sounding board. And that sounding board, that professional conversation can be the use of AI. I'm going to teach the children about the solar system in this way, but a curiosity part of me as an educator, is there another way that I could do it? Because I've been doing it this way for the last 4 years, and I'd like to do it in a different way. That is kind of where I'm going. I don't have to take what AI says. I don't have to do it, but it's just having that professional conversation. And the beautiful moment of working with AI is that you have to keep going back. If you're not happy with the response, you ask it to redo it, and you continually drive and drive and drive. But that doesn't take away from that creativity as a teacher. No one's saying you have to do it. In the UK at the moment, we have a real issue with leaders getting caught up with parents and whole bureaucracy and systems and processes, and it's taking them away from their actual task of teaching and learning. And it's quite sad that a lot of my work, I would say about 5% ends up being teaching and learning in the conversations I have with leaders. It all is about the politics.
Other things.
And it's the other things that really where AI can come in, and maybe AI is a whole nother episode that we should really get up to.
Go back at it,
Yeah,
absolutely. But having AI to help with that mechanics, I need a response to this email. Just lovely, thank you so much. I can humanize
the
it.
Mundane,
absolutely. I think that's where I was going. Oh, perfect.
You just lit my light bulb there, George. I agree with what you're saying. And thank you for painting with more colors the picture that you were trying to paint. We were talking about policies and systems. Now we've sort of shifted into AI. Another conversation is, how can AI help improve policies and systems, perhaps? Maybe the answer was staring at us all the time.
Maybe.
How to optimize all that process, all that data collection, all that, how to take it all into account.
I think that's the answer.
We got there. We got there in the end.
We got the answer,
This feels like we've gotten a lot closer. There we go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Maybe section to the beginning.
Yeah. Spoilers, stay to the end. If you want to see how these three idiots got to this and it took them about an hour, enjoy the process.
That's the thing. That's the beauty of it. No, the process is actually the beauty of it. And
absolutely.
I think with AI and policy, the thing with policy is that we need a lot of data. We need a lot of data points. We need to process a lot of data. I think that's where when we talk about scaled organization, or we are going into scalability and things like that, I think that's when we can have old policies put into AI, and then the data points then collected according to today's challenges, and then all of this give us something. And the thing, like you said about AI, that you can keep going back. It's like having a professional conversation or like a brainstorming session with yourself, of course, because you're the person who's putting in the information. And it can always, like you said, you can always not accept whatever the generative AI is putting into.
Especially we're in a culture where we feel especially if we're in a culture where we don't feel we can ask for help. I don't feel I can go to my line manager. I don't think I can keep ringing George to ask him for some consultancy on this. And the AI is kind of it's a safety net, isn't it? It's having that, no one's going to check.
That's actually true.
I've got two things that I wanted to say. I wanted to say something originally, and then I remembered something else and I forgot the original one. So I'm going to start with the one I remember. Yes, I agree. AI is very accessible and we're there, and you've got to, type whatever you want, and you've got that safety net. You've got that backup there, very accessible to everybody. To me, it reminds me, it's kind of like the modern version of when you are in a staff room and you ask your colleague, hey, I've got to teach the solar system, to use the same example as you, George. I've got to teach the solar system, and this is how I normally teach it. How do you normally do it? What ideas? Or having these systems within schools where you've got mentors within the teaching staff, within the teaching team. I've worked at institutions before where they have it like a triangle. So you're this person's mentor, this person mentors this other person, and this person
mentor-mentee program.
So you've got sorts. Exactly. Because there's all sorts of different formats. So you can bring all your teaching staff together, brainstorm ideas. How do you do this? How do you do that? Obviously, with AI, you can just type it in and get some ideas from that. And I've now remembered what else I wanted to say. Something that I find useful and then I normally do when I'm asking AI for further questions, etc., or even when I'm working with clients and we're in a coaching session and we've perhaps hit a roadblock and we can't really seem to find how to carry on. Something that's worked really well is asking, this is what we've taken into account. Can you give us an idea of what things we might be missing or what things we might not have considered that might be important to do so? And then that normally brings up another whole lot of things. And more often than not, there's something very useful there.
I like that triangle idea, Pablo.
Even I did.
Look after you. We've now got accountability, haven't we? We've now got everyone is responsible for something and everybody is looking after. Everyone is looked after.
Yeah. So everybody in that setup has both roles, is looked after and looks after somebody. Yeah. And it's very different. It's very different when you've only got two people and those two people have to look after each other and and feel looked after, because quite a lot of the time one person can feel like they're doing it more than the other. But when you've got it in a triangle, it's different people. So me looking after you, George, I can focus on that. And the relationship is very clear. I'm your mentor. Then you are Shruti's mentor. So Shruti looks after me. So I know that if I've got any issues, I can go to Shruti, but I can help you. I don't have to help Shruti as well, because then it's, you get into what's equivalent exchange and is my helping as much as she's helping me. Becomes a therapy session then. Exactly. So triangular setup.
Can a square work?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
No, it wouldn't matter. The nice thing, what I like about a triangle as well, is that everybody has the same two people in common. So this works out perfectly because there's just three of us here, right? So I know, or say you and me are working together and I go, oh, George, thank you so much. Because the other day when I was with Shruti, she said this and that. And then you obviously work with Shruti separately as well. So you kind of like get glimpses of our relationship and your relationship with her in a sense.
I see. Yes.
Obviously, this is all everybody obliging to privacy and safety and et cetera, et cetera.
It goes without saying, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'd think it would, wouldn't you? But it's always important to mention.
If you've got
George, sorry.
Where there's only 5 teachers, I'm just trying to work out how that would work, or 4 teachers.
Well, then have a square. Then have 4 people. Well, better than 2. In my opinion, better than 2 pairs.
More than 2. That's the important thing. Yes, everyone has.
It can't be just like 2 people. Yeah, it needs to basically.
It becomes very isolated.
I think what Pablo is saying, it needs to rotate. Like it can't be the same person giving and receiving. Yeah, it needs to be like a rotational thing. If I'm not wrong.
Yes, because
so we've gone from a triangle to a square and now rotation.
Yeah, if it's just, you're right, Pablo. If it's just me and you. You're there, I'm there. If it's just me and you and you're having a really bad week and I'm having a glorious one, I'm actually going to be rubbing it in to you because I need you to look after me in a minute. So when you finish crying, you're going to come and help me. But that's not going to work, is it?
Yeah.
I need to say, oh, gosh, yes, be sympathetic because then Shruti's going to help me. Yes, I understand. Okay, I love that model. Thank you. I feel a LinkedIn post coming on.
Go for it.
So I have the last question open for both of you. And this is strictly around the traditional way how schools, organizations, institutions are functioning. So if you could just rewrite one part of how schools or education institutions are run to help teachers actually feel purposeful again, what would you shift first? I mean, there could be a lot of things one after the other, but what would be the first thing for both of you?
I'm ready. Are you, Pablo? When we slow things down, keep the expectations high, but low threat. So we're still expecting the best, but rather than everything being happening yesterday and we're in a rush all of the time, nothing gets done properly, would be my initial reaction to that question.
Okay.
Thanks. Probably the audience is getting an idea as to what my brain feels like or looks like from the inside. I just got caught up there with what the difference for me is between high expectations and high standards. I've got a very particular opinion about the word expectations, George, but perhaps for another episode. I agree.
We've got 4 episode ideas
already. Excellent. So I agree with what you're saying. And I think in order to become more time efficient, for me, it goes back to purpose. So I would, again, the audience might perhaps find me a bit repetitive, but I'd ask the question, what for? So if we've got to rewrite anything, I think any new direction that you go into, any new change that you make has to start with a general idea of where you want to go to.
Okay.
And sort of zoning into that, because it's zoning into that is going to block out all of the other options that you have. So we're going to make it a lot more economical, as it were, efficient, if we know where we want to go. So what are we educating for? Are we educating for people to be able to become functional in working contexts? Are we educating for people to develop skills that will allow them to do whatever job? Are we educating them for them to get a certificate and be able to access something else? That answer, or the answers to that question, I think is going to influence every action and decision that you make after that.
But don't you think the answer to these 3 questions could be a very personal opinion of the student?
I was going to say, further to that, do we ever ask the pupils that? Or do we just tell them you need GCSEs because you need this grade? Yeah, interesting thoughts. Very interesting thoughts, Pablo. Nice and deep.
Yeah.
We kind of like done a full loop again.
Gone back.
Talk about AI now.
Yeah, like, how directive are we being? Like, how many choices are we, how are we taking into account the people's opinion, people that are perhaps benefiting, you could even argue that, but students ultimately, how much are we taking them into account? We're trying to design policies and services for the people now, and we don't even know what the future is going to look like in 10, 20 years' time. So how do we include all of that in there?
Yeah.
I think that is one of the reasons why I think a lot of world's population is going under like an unemployment phase. This is a very big reason, because we've focused education, I don't know, to be this glorious, I won't say glorified, but something is missing for sure, because it's not matching what is needed today. But for sure they're educated. But on what grounds? Students are educated. All of us are educated. But we have to constantly see there are people who have actually fought an entire war to be 100, I won't say 100%, but to always be learning, because we know that skills are going to help. My trigonometry did not help for sure, right? There are a lot of other things that did not help. So if we are clear, if education institutions or, people sitting at authority or leadership, if you're clear that your education institution is going to help people get jobs, or it is going to help people make people more curious, or it is going to help people do certain things, if that is cleared from in your head, rather than making it with the best institution in this area, we're going to provide this best. There was a quote by my school, I will not name it, spread the light.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So how are we, what is the purpose? Like Pablo said, what's the purpose? If we ourselves, or even leaderships, or all of these institutions are making it clear, this is what we want to do, I think it'll be easier for the teachers, it'll be easier for the students that, hey, I'm going to go to this institution, I'm going to learn how to make money, or I'm going to learn how to be relevant for the next 20 years, or I'm going to learn to teach. Let's just say I should know all of the concept to be able to teach someone. It's so scattered as of now.
Yes,
isn't it?
But we're not
very segmented.
Being proactive, isn't it? Thinking about what potentially will things look like in 5 years, 10 years. Because if you think the generation we're teaching now will be retiring in about the year 2075. What on earth will it look like then? Madness.
I think everybody with the mask for oxygen, for sure.
Yeah, that's yet another episode. Possible scenarios for the future.
We should do that. 5. We've got 5 ideas from Pablo.
There we
Pablo
go.
wins this round.
Okay, good.
We could get many, many more by anybody who's watching or listening.
Yes.
Either which one you would most like to see out of the 5 that we got out, or suggest your own. What are your burning questions?
That is a fantastic idea. Let's have a poll. Yes.
Yes, we'll do a poll. And this is my request to everybody listening to it, because we have seen the trends. A lot of you go till the end, like listen to the entire episode, which is lovely. Thank you so much for doing that. But we need inputs from you. It's very, very important. We need to know what goes around in your mind. What answers do you want us to, what questions do you want us to answer, and so on and so forth. Because it makes a difference. It does.
It really does, because we tackle all of these questions and issues from our realities, but we ants.
I think we should do a
represent.
Yeah,
I totally.
I think
agree.
we should do a survey on the selling community thing, and let's get their questions answered here.
And send in questions to us that we can answer. Yes, I'd love that.
Let's do that. All right.
Excellent.
So that's for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining in today. It was lovely. And we love the fact that we end up on mindset. And we're going to do 4 more episodes on whatever Pablo said we're going to nose to. Plus, we would love to take up only audience question kind of an episode. So please send in your questions. And we would love that. What say, guys?
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Pablo. Thank you, Shruti. Always a pleasure to work with you. And we will see everybody in the next episode.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Muchos. Ciao.